Hi there. In today's video, I'm going to teach you something very important if you are taking any type of test that has a writing component. So, if you are taking the IELTS, the TOEFL, the CELPEEP, or even just a university test, it can be any type of test. But if you are asked to write something like an essay or a paragraph, this video is for you. I'm going to teach you a very important skill that will help improve your marks when it comes to writing on tests. So, let's get started. So, I have here an essay question. This question is actually, I have seen it on the IELTS. You know, you have similar types of questions on the TOEFL and sometimes in university. The question is this: education is the single most important factor in the development of a country. Do you agree or disagree? Or maybe, to what extent do you agree or disagree? So, this is an example of a question you might be asked. Now, a problem a lot of students have is in their answer to this question. They see this and think, okay, education is the most important factor in the development of a country. Yes, I agree. Or, I disagree, and they start writing. And what do they write? Usually, the very first thing students will write is this: I agree that education is the single most important factor in the development of a country because... So, what is the problem with this? Is there any problem with starting your essay with something like this or beginning your answer this way? There's a big problem. I want you to take a moment and think, what could be the problem with starting your essay off with this sentence? Well, if you noticed, the student here has used the exact same wording that is in the question. If you do this on the IELTS, and many students do this, same with the TOEFL, you will actually lose marks. The same applies in university, because you are not showing your abilities. You are just copying what somebody else has said, or what the essay question is. So in this video, I'm going to teach you ways to improve both yourself and your answer by changing this wording. How can you change your introduction so it's different from the question? Let's take a look at how to make these changes. So, what we're going to do, in order to change the question into a proper answer that doesn't just copy the question, is paraphrase. The key word here is paraphrase. This might be a new word for you. What does it mean to paraphrase something? Well, when we paraphrase, it means we take somebody else's sentence and change it into our own words. We change the words in the sentence and sometimes the sentence structure, but we keep the same meaning. The meaning from the original sentence stays the same. Same meaning, but different words and a different sentence structure. So, it's in your words, but it keeps the other person's meaning. So, we are going to paraphrase this example question into our own words. First, we're going to look at how to do that using vocabulary and synonyms. Let's take the same question. Education is the single most important factor in the development of a country. How can we put this into new words, our own words, while keeping the same meaning? Well, we can use synonyms. This might be a new word for you too. Synonym. Synonyms are words that have the same meaning but are different words. For example, big and large have the same meaning. Similarly, huge and enormous are synonyms. They mean the same thing but are different words. So, to paraphrase, you need to use different synonyms. This ensures you're not just copying the original words. Instead, you're using words that have the same meaning but are unique and your own. So, let's look at an example. Our first word here is education. What's another word we can use instead of education? Well, there are different words we can use. One option could be schooling. So, we could change this word to schooling. For example, schooling is the single most important factor in the development of a country. What's another word we can change? Well, maybe the phrase most important. Instead of using most important, we could try most significant or most essential. So, essential or significant. There are many words you can use. But the key point here is to find a word that has the same meaning but is a different word. Here's another word. Factor. Can you think of another word for factor? Well, sometimes factor can be an aspect or an element. You could even say a significant role or a part. So there are different words we can use that have similar meanings. Now, in terms of the word development, we can change it to advancement, progression, or evolution. And for the word country, Another option could be nation. These are all synonyms, and this is what you want to do. When you look at the question, think about some new words you can use that have the same meaning. This is also important throughout your essay because one problem a lot of students have is they keep using the same word again and again and again in every sentence. This does not help with your marks. It's better to use different words that have the same meaning. At the same time, you have to be careful. Some students find a new word, think it's a great word, but there's a slight difference in meaning. So, you need to be really comfortable with the word you choose, and you need to know what it actually means so it doesn't sound strange. So if we wanted to change this, instead of saying education is the single most important factor in the development of a country, our first step in the paraphrase could be changing these words to schooling is the single most significant element in the advancement of a nation. So that's just one example. Now, let's look at another thing you can do in order to paraphrase the question on a test or exam. Another way we can paraphrase is by changing the structure of the sentence. So, for example, you might have a verb, which is an action, and you might change that into its noun form. So, for example, if your verb is developing, you might change that into development. You might change, similarly, a noun into a verb. So, for example, we just said development is the noun. It can turn into develop or developing. You can also change things into adjectives. So, if, for example, you are talking about technology, which is a noun, you can change this into the adjective form, which is technological. So, changing the form of the word can help you with paraphrasing. Also, changing the placement of the words can help you out. So, for example, in our original sentence, or the question was, education is the single most important factor in the development of a country. So, I have now changed some of the wording as well as the order. So, here, education is at the beginning. In my sentence, the most essential element of a nation's development is education. I have changed the order of the sentence, so now education is at the end instead of at the beginning. I have also started out with the most essential as my beginning, whereas here it was in the middle. You will also notice we have here, in the development of a country. I have changed this to nation's development. I could also change this to country's development, instead of the development of a country. So, changing the order of the sentence and changing some of the structures can really help you in terms of paraphrasing. Now let's learn one other way in which we can improve our marks by paraphrasing. So, the last tip I have about paraphrasing a question is using concessions. So, what is a concession? Well, I want you to look at what the question actually says and my new answer to it. The question, again, same question as before. Education is the single most important factor in the development of a country. So, I have changed some words, and I have also changed the structure a bit. But there's one other thing I've added. Although many would argue that the economy is the most important factor in nation building, I think education has a far greater impact. So, what I've done here is I have added a concession. A concession is where you say what the opposite opinion is, and then you say what your opinion is. So, you are giving two opinions. You are giving your opinion and also what other people might think. This is a great thing to do, especially in essays, and this is something you can do at the beginning of your answer. So, we use here the key word, although, and you will notice that this has two clauses. I don't want to get too technical with grammar on you today, but what I mean is, if you see, we have the red part. Although many would argue that the economy is the most important factor in nation building. And then we have a second part, so we have two parts to this sentence. I think education has a far greater impact. So the first part of the sentence is in red, and it's the although part, and the second part of the sentence is in purple. And that's, I think education has a far greater impact. And they're separated by a comma. So a concession has two parts to it. You say what the other people think first, in this case. Although many would argue that the economy is the most important factor in nation building. So this is what some people would say. Now I'm going to say what I think. I think education has a far greater impact. So why is this a good idea? Well, one reason is because when you write a concession, when you are showing what the opposite opinion of yours is, you are showing that you have thought about the issue. You are looking at both sides. You are not just looking at your opinion. You are looking at both sides, and then you are making a judgment. So this shows that you are thinking about the question, and you are really giving it some thought. And by representing both sides, you are really showing critical thinking. So this is a very good idea to do. So the three things we have talked about today in terms of paraphrasing the question are changing the words using synonyms, changing the sentence structure, and adding the other perspective using concessions. So these are three things you can do in order to change the question so you are not just copying what is on your test paper. Again, this is a great thing to do if you are writing a high school essay, university essay, TOEFL, IELTS, CELPIP, all of these things. This skill will really come in handy for you. So I hope you have enjoyed this video, and until next time, take care.